I see you shiver with anticipation. Yes, it's time for me once again. I say it's time as if I had a regular schedule of these. It's an occasional series, but I am going to once again just gush about one of my favorite movies. And in this case, it's going to be a movie I not only love, but was kind of really important for my coming into my own. I'm going to talk about the Rocky Horror Picture Show. So this movie, holy crap, I tried to think of how you would describe this movie to someone who hasn't seen it, because at this point it's been around for so long and it's become such a touchstone that you will see many other things compared to it. It's very hard to compare it to anything else though. So if I were to try and explain it to someone who'd never seen it, the Rocky Horror Picture Show is a oversexed rock musical version of an ultra low budget 1950s sci-fi film. Like total B grade. Exploitive kind of thing. That's what it is. But it's that made in the late 70s, done with rock music, you know, completely, like I say, oversexed, very gender bendy. It's got all this stuff going on, but at its core, that's what it is. It is the kind of story that would be that would have been the second feature on a late night double bill. You know, way back in the day, like before I was even born, that it would have been that kind of thing, except crazy and insane and with legitimately good music. So I'm going to assume, having done that little exercise of how do you describe it to someone who's never seen it, that most folks are at least aware of what the Rocky Horror Picture Show is, even if they haven't seen it. So let's talk about what makes this film awesome. So first of all, let's just start with the music. Let's start simple. The tunes are catchy. They are sung with a lot of energy by the cast. They come in at the right points. Most of them actually move the story forward. It doesn't fall into the trap of older musicals where they kind of stop the story dead to have a musical number and then the story resumes once the song is over. The songs are moving things forward, which was becoming the trend more at that point in time. And so they do that, but they stand alone, and there are so many great songs that are good to just listen to. I'm personally really fond of Science Fiction Double Feature, and the reprise version of that at the very end, Superheroes. Well, there's actually a proper reprise as well, but that feeds into it. Sweet Transvestite, The Time Warp, holy cow, it's just a jump to the left. And you know, these songs are legitimately good songs. They are fun songs. They are toe-tapping songs. And then there's the cast. You have, in their youth, at their just sort of right on the edge of stardom, you have Susan Sarandon. You have Tim Curry. You have, and even the people, you have Meatloaf, and even the people who didn't become, you know, notable for other things later on are still all great in these parts. Barry Bostwick is terrific as Brad, as this guy with he could not have a stick further up his butt if he tried, and yet to watch what goes on with him over the course of the film. And then you've got some of the other supporting players like Magenta and Columbia, Nell Campbell, and oh God, I've lost her name all of a sudden. Oh God. But this cast though, this cast is so good. But I really have to take my hat off to two in particular. The first is Richard O'Brien, who plays Riff Raff, but who also wrote the original play that the movie is based on. Because if you didn't know, this movie just didn't form out of the ether. This was a stage play first called The Rocky Horror Show. And so, despite what you might logically would think of, oh my God, the studio must not have known what they were doing. The studio, which was Fox, licensed the rights to the play, which is just as raunchy as the movie, and deals with all the same stuff. So they knew exactly what they were getting, and yet somehow this got greenlit. God, the 70s were kind of amazing. Right before all the studios, looked at Jaws and then Star Wars and decided, oh, that's what we're gonna do forever. But there was a really exciting time for a little while of just crazy stuff being tried, and this ended up being one of them. But Richard O'Brien as Riff Raff, he is a truly magnetic presence on the screen, and I really wish he appeared in more movies since this. The few other things I've seen him in, he's usually one of the best things in them, but he has this creep factor, for just a lack of a better term. I can't think of another way to put it. He comes across as a bit creepy, but not in a, get away from me, in a, I'm kind of curious as to exactly what your deal is kind of creepy, which is tough to pull off. It's hard to be creepy and magnetic at the same time, but he is. But I've sort of saved for the last talking about Tim Curry as Dr. Frankenfurter. And in talking about this, I'll get a little more personal on it. So, at this point, I think it's pretty well known on this channel, but just in case, I have a fluid sense of gender. Have had for pretty much my whole life, though my sense of understanding of that has been something that's evolved over time. But as much as my journey to, I was going to say acceptance, I've never really been in a state of not accepting myself, but sort of coming to a state of understanding. The groundwork for that was laid in my upbringing. And the fact that my mother was always very certain she embedded in me, whatever I am, she would love me. And she didn't know about all this. She didn't know for a long time, but I knew that no matter what, she would still love me. And she, of all people, introduced me to this movie. I was 13 when she let me see this movie for the first time. I don't know if she just had an intuition that it was something that I kind of needed to see at that age, but I did. I did need to see it. And before anyone gets like weird, like, oh, that's not an appropriate age to watch it, go back and actually watch the thing. It's not as dirty as you remember it being. There's basically one nip slip, one F-bomb, and then other than that, it's just the concepts are, I was going to say abnormal. Let's go with atypical. There's a lot of sexually atypical stuff that goes on, but you don't see any of it. And a lot of it's handled very casually, which again is, I think, important to its impact. Because I very genuinely believe that this is an important movie. Not in a, teach it in film 101, Citizen Kane, The Godfather kind of way. It's important because of the impact it has on a certain kind of audience member who sees it for the first time, especially if they see it at a point in their lives when they need it. Because this movie, better than any other movie that I can think of, embodies purely the idea of let your freak flag fly. Whatever you are, that's fine. Don't worry that you're weird. We're all weird. There is no one in this film who is not weird. Even the straight-laced characters are revealed to be just as weird as everybody else. And it's beautiful. And it's celebrated as beautiful without becoming pretentious. Because a lot of the messages and a lot of the themes at the core of this could have been really heavy-handed, really hammy, but it's just presented in this raucous, bizarre sci-fi way that kind of sneaks it in on you. And again, if you're someone who needs to get this, it really can make you feel that it's okay to be weird. And at 13, when I saw this movie, I sure as heck didn't know what the heck I was, but I knew I didn't fit the category of what I understood to be normal. I didn't know what I was. I didn't know what was going on. I didn't know where I'd end up. I still don't know where I'll end up. That's ongoing. But I watched this movie over and over and over again, and I do believe it honestly really helped me feel down to my core there's nothing wrong with being weird, because everybody's weird. Not everybody's weird in the same way, but everybody's weird. It's okay. You are okay. And like I say, for a movie that can carry a message like that, but not beat you over the head with it, that's quite an accomplishment. And it's lightning in a bottle in a lot of ways. Like, there are films that I hear compared to this, and I always think it's a comparison that does no favors to whatever film is being compared to this. And that includes films I like, but it's also backfired. So like, I remember people, when it first came out, comparing Hedwig and the Angry Inch to this, and I couldn't finish Hedwig and the Angry Inch. I really need to go back and try that again. It's been over 10 years since I've tried to watch that. But I couldn't get through it. And I remember thinking, no, that was a lousy comparison. Or I've seen like Repo the Genetic Opera compared to Rocky Horror Picture. And I genuinely love that movie, but no. There's nothing else like this movie. And like I said, other things can be compared to it. You can't really compare it to anything else. And going to a midnight screening of this movie at 22 was the very first time I ever went out in public in a dress. And I did it going to this movie and the people who go to the midnight screenings of this movie because I knew they wouldn't judge me. I knew I could go there and be safe. I didn't know where else I could go because, you know, I could think, well, I go to a gay bar. Like, well, first of all, I know enough now to know that, you know, cross-dressers and people with wobbly gender aren't necessarily welcome in gay bars. But, you know, even at the time, it's like, well, I'm not gay. I'm not attracted to men. So I knew I didn't belong there. Like, I couldn't have told you anywhere I belonged, but I knew I could go to a midnight screening of the Rocky Horror Picture Show and not feel like I was unwelcome and not made to feel weird. Because everybody was weird who was there, and we loved it. And if you've never been to a midnight screening, I would recommend it. I don't recommend it as your first ever viewing experience of this film, because I think to get the proper sort of fullness of that, you need to know this movie pretty much, not necessarily front to back, but you need to have seen it at least 2 or 3 times. Maybe even at least once recently before going to see a midnight screening, because you won't really be watching the movie. When you go to a midnight screening, there's 2 things that go on. The first is most midnight screenings have a cast. They have people, you know, who are done up fully in the costumes performing the movie, like down in front of the screen as it's happening above them. So you're getting the live version as it's playing up there. And then, of course, there's all the callbacks, because this movie, and because it is so weird, there are tons of bizarre pauses that are perfect for the audience to shout something out. And most of it I can't repeat because I try and keep this channel clean. The callbacks at a midnight screening of the show are much dirtier than the movie itself actually is, funnily enough. But I think in many ways it's the original Mystery Science Theater 3000. Fans would go and just start shouting things at the screen. Okay, here's something I can tell you to give you an example. There are a number of various points in the film where characters get annoyed and just like you know, hit a table, hit a dashboard in the car, you know, whatever. And this is the fine tuning that they've got all these callbacks down to. Audiences will say, when they know it's coming, will go, kill the Smurf, kill the Smurf, kill the Smurf. Movie 2, Smurfs nothing. And that's one of the cleaner ones you would have, but things like that all over the place. It is very MST3K, but it predates it by about 20 years. And it's just such a unique experience. And I had the privilege last year in 2017 at Boston Comic-Con to go and to meet some of the cast. Now, I don't do the celebrity meet and greets at cons. I don't go to many cons in the first place, and I really don't do those because they're a money sink. Anybody who's a particularly big name, you've got to pay a whole bunch of extra money just to, you know, get in there for like a minute. And even the folks who aren't that, it's still going to cost you like $10 for a selfie, $30 to get something signed. You know, I'm not that person. I generally don't care, but I went to meet Tim Curry specifically. I actually didn't even know that there were going to be other cast members there. But Nell Campbell was there. Patricia Quinn, finally remembered it, who played Columbia. She was there. Barry Bostwick was there. God, that man's tall. And Tim Curry was there. And I got to meet them, and all 4 of them were wonderful and appreciative and accepting, and I went looking like I wanted to look. I wasn't cosplaying. I wasn't going as a character. I was going as me. And but in a way that, you know, would usually get me a double take in most places. Well, I got some double takes there, but not in the line to meet cast for Rocky Horror, just elsewhere in the con. I don't know if I'll ever do that kind of meet and greet with a celebrity again, but worth the trip, worth the cost. This movie, it's important to me, but I do think it's important to more than me. I think it is a genuinely important film, and I think even if it doesn't impact you the way it impacted me, it's still just fun. It's loud and it's raucous and it's insane and it's oversexed and it's bizarre and it's stupid at times, but all in the sense of fun. Let's go nuts. And yeah, I love this movie. So that's me rambling on for a while about the Rocky Horror Picture Show. It really is one of my favorite films. So, what are your thoughts about this movie or anything else that I've mentioned in the course of this particular ramble? Whatever your thoughts are, drop something down in the comments. Let's talk about it. There's all the stuff to do. You know, the stuff you don't need me to tell you this stuff. I do have a Patreon. I'll mention that. There's a link down below for that, plus all the other usual gobbledygook. So, until next time, this council is adjourned.